Well, good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Good morning, Julie.
Good morning, Havilah.
Oh, you guys, it's going to be a fantastic day. We're going to talk all about what to do when you don't know what to do. This is the financial edition.
That's right.
I know some people are probably nervous about being on here because they're afraid that we're going to bring up everything that they should be doing. But I promise you, Julie and I are women of hope.
That's right.
And we believe that things can be turned around. So I just want you to kind of open up your heart in terms of this conversation. And you know what? Why not start today? Whatever we need to do, we can start today. And that's the coolest part about how God created us is we can do anything when we choose to do it. So first of all, I want to introduce Julie to you. Julie's on staff at Truth the Table. She's our operations director, but really she does finance, HR, live vision casting. This woman is amazing. And she is from?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in New York City, and I am Latina. So a shout out to all my ladies out there. I'm so excited to be with you today. And this is such a timely topic.
It is.
Right? This is such a timely topic in this season. And I'm really excited because like you said, we're women of hope, right?
I know. And, finances is such a unique thing. And I want to talk, what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of share, Julie's going to share, we're going to have a conversation. Then we're going to give you guys 5 key points that we think you need that are essential in this season for you during quarantine and all the other stuff that's going on. And then we're going to answer questions. We have a few live viewers that are going to tune in with us, as well as we've got some questions that have come in. So just kind of settle in. We're going to be here for about 45 minutes to 60 minutes. Grab that phone charger, close that door, just give yourself some time to really focus on this live training. We're going to do our best. Now, I want to say this first and foremost. This is not financial advice. Mm-hmm. So please, legally, don't take it to the bank and say, well, Havilah said, or Julie said. No, this is just thoughts and concepts that we think will be helpful. And again, you do what you and your spouse or yourself has decided, as well as your financial advisor, go that direction. We recommend that. Now, finances are a unique thing. It's interesting. I was always a worker from very, very early on. I started cleaning houses when I was 17, and I cleaned houses until I was 21, and then went on staff at a church. And I was good with my money. I didn't make a lot of money, but I lived at home, and so I didn't spend a lot of money. And when Ben and I got married, I had no concept of finances. I literally, as long as I had money to go when I went to the mall, that's all I really needed. But I was living a pretty cushy life at home in my own 1 bedroom, so don't worry. But I didn't understand it. And when we first got married, we had to begin to understand how each of us kind of dealt with money. And I remember we were married in 2005, had our baby in 2006 and in 2008. And in the middle of that season, I remember my sister was a real estate agent, and she said, Havilah, you got to get a house. The market is skyrocketing like San Francisco in Sacramento. And so she bought a home, and I went to Ben and was like, we need to buy a home. This is immediate. We have to do this. And Ben was like, I just don't feel like this is the right thing. And I remember being so like, what? Like, we have to do this. And he said, I just don't feel like it's the right time. And I learned early on that 2 yeses make a yes in a marriage, not 1 yes and 1 no. So I really surrendered to that idea and was like, okay, that's fine. Well, meanwhile, in 2008, the entire economy crashed. Most of my friends lost their homes, had to file bankruptcy. That was everybody. It wasn't like a bad financial decision. It just was what it was. And I remember going back to Ben and being like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. You saved our lives. I would have financially ruined us. And so I started to begin to trust him. And one thing that Ben and I always had in our hearts was to stay debt free. Yeah. And that sounds really great until you're not making enough to pay your bills. And there was one point, I'll never forget, 2009, 2010, Ben and I were literally working 6 jobs to pay the bills so we didn't go into debt. And I remember he was doing sound tech on the side for weddings. He did a corporate paper route where he would get up at 3:30 in the morning twice a week and do 2 hours of a paper route. And we were just doing everything we could to stay afloat. We didn't have a lot, but we made it work and we stayed out of debt. So I'm talking to you as somebody who did not inherit any money, who did not have, I am not a trust fund baby. I wish I was. Mom and Dad, I love you. I got a spiritual trust fund. I didn't get a financial trust fund. And so I'm coming to you as somebody who's kind of in some ways self-made, starting from the bottom, cleaning houses, and now have been able to grow, but still trusting God, still trying to figure it out. 4 kids are so expensive. Yes. It's ridiculous. One of our kids just went in for braces, and we got a bill for $5,000 for one child. And I'm like, I go home, and if you have a lot of kids, you get this. You're like, times four, $20,000 for our children's braces. Well, sweethearts, only one of you is going to get braces. You have to beat the other one out. Yeah. So
their wives will thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So I am in this flow. And the reason I brought Julie here is I know we all have unique moments, but I know we're going to talk about how to stay strong financially, but I'm curious, what was it like for you in learning finances and growing up and all that stuff?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll tell you something. I didn't know anything. Like maybe like some of you on this live here, I don't know anything about like how to balance a budget, what to do with your money, how to make it work for you as well. So I, early on, I wasn't really set up for success because like maybe some of us out there, your past financial failures are attached to shame and mistakes.
That's right.
Maybe divorce, maybe, you thought this was going to be the thing that was going to make it for you, the thing, and it wasn't the thing. So in my case, it was divorce.
Absolutely.
So because my parents divorced when I was in college, I had to get a student loan because my financial aid and all the grants that I got for college didn't actually pan out through my senior year.
Why? Because of their divorce?
Because of their divorce. So our financial situation changed. And basically my dad and my mom's positioning financially wasn't the same as it was before. So
that makes sense.
So it was really tough, especially being my last year of college. So I was so proud of the fact that I was debt-free, student loan-free until my senior year. And all of a sudden I was enthralled in this world of like, oh my gosh, I have to get this student loan
to finish up.
And a $10,000 loan turned into $14,000 once you get the interest rates. And then you think, oh, I can defer it until I get a job. And then, and I studied social work, and you don't get rich out of being, I'm sorry, I wasn't a doctor, mom, like it was just crazy. And there was a lot of shame associated with that because I said, my goodness, how am I going to get out of this? And no one told me. And I didn't know, I didn't know either. And I didn't have anybody in my circle that wasn't savvy enough.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we, and that's the thing is often in our society, at least in America, I don't know where everyone's tuning in from, but in the States, you can get credit and not have any ability to pay it. And they kind of suck you in early on. And so you are told this kind of set of lies, which is you go to college, you invest, you get the loan. And then when you get out of college, you'll be able to get your job and you'll be able to pay it off. But what's happening specifically in the States is you're going into so much debt that by the time you get your job, it's not even in like closeness to what you, and then so you're basically imprisoned to this debt for a decade or more of your life.
That's so true. And it's not proportional. So
it's not.
I went into something called, some millennials maybe out there maybe have heard of this. It's called a quarter life crisis. So like at 25, you're having like this crisis, like what is happening? What's going on? And then you have shame aside along with it. Like I'm embarrassed. What's going to happen? So there's a lot of things that we need to crawl out from as far as like when it comes to finances. And then in this season, actually, from February, March on, there's a lot of things that happened to us that we weren't really expecting.
That's right.
So that's all. Sorry.
No. And I was going to say, that's where Ben and I found ourselves, where we had purchased our first home. We had our 4 kids, and then we lost our job in the middle of a recession where people weren't hiring. And I remember, us just not having anything and not knowing what it was going to look like. And I look back at that season, and just to give you guys hope, if you're in that moment, the hand of God kept us. Totally. I don't know how it worked. 1 + 1 did not equal 2 in our lives. I mean, we were on WIC for our kids. We were doing everything we knew how to do. And ultimately, I look back and it was the grace of God that kept us in it, but we had to be disciplined. Like I remember I was cutting coupons, I was making bread, I was doing everything I knew how to do to not spend the money that I didn't have and not be ashamed if I needed help.
Yeah.
And that was really important.
Totally. Same. I remember taking one full-time job and a part-time job plus 4 courses. Four college courses. And I was like, my hair was falling out, but I was like, we're going to do this. We're going to get it. You know, I'm walking on that finish line and I'm going to get my diploma. And I'll tell you the discipline and the tools that I learned in that season. And I say season because it is a season. This is not going to be forever, right? Those situations aren't forever. It's just a season. But at that moment, I didn't know that. I thought I was like,
it feels like forever.
Right? It does. It feels like it's going to happen forever. It's going to be, you know, when is this going to end? But it did. It ended. And luckily, you know, like you said, that discipline and that ethic really carries you through.
It does. It really does. And I want to say for many of you, you know, I've had family members that have gone through the devastation of bankruptcy and losing of a home and their cars getting repossessed. And I saw a lot of friends go through that. And there is life after that. So if you're in a season where you feel like you're drowning and that things might be taken from you and you're going to try to figure that out, I promise you that you will get through this, and it's going to look a little different. It's going to be a little hard, but I promise you, I've seen my friends, they have been able to really, I mean, first I've been like next to them in this moment, noticing that there is hope. But here's the reality is you don't serve the God of money. You serve a provider who shows us how to bring in revenue and resource. And I feel like, you know, it's a spirit. And this is our first point, which I think is really a part of this. We're going to give you 5 points to what we think is critical during this season. And some of you might be on furlough where you don't get to work and you have a little bit. Some of you might have lost your job and now you're not sure what it's going to look like. Others of you probably are doing fine. Your finances are just what it is, but you're not sure what the ramifications of the economy is going to look like. I know for us personally, we lost 40% of our income instantaneously when the COVID hit. And we've been able to work hard to get some of that back up by other resources, but we're still in it. We're in the thick of it. So I'm not talking as somebody who's way over here going, what I would do if I was in your spot. I'm like in it. And these are the things that Julie and I are reminding ourselves of every single day as truth to table, bringing the truth of God's word to our everyday lives. So first one is scarcity is not your portion or lot in life. Now, I shared this in the beginning of quarantine, this story, but when everything hit, I remember, I love that I didn't turn my phone off. Sorry. I remember I had these chairs in my garage that I wanted to get rid of. And I was like, okay, you know what? I just need to go after this kind of abundance mentality of like, I'm not going to be fearful. So I put it on one of our classified ad situations and somebody came in to get the chairs. And I love these chairs, but we didn't have room for them. They've been sitting in our garage forever. My hope was to recover them, but you know, whatever. And the woman was loading it up and she was explaining how her daughter, this was a single mom, and she was coming to live with her grandkids. And all of a sudden, and she said, we're starting all over. We need everything. And all of a sudden the Lord said to me, those 2 other chairs that are sitting in your garage, I want you to give those to her. Wow. And I was like, no, these are Ballard Design, still on their website, beautiful swivel white chairs. I don't want to give them to her. And I remember wrestling in the driveway with her, and I heard the Lord say, you have to go after the spirit of scarcity in your life, Havilah, right now, or this thing is going to literally imprison you. And I remember just literally going, hey, do you need any of like these chairs? Let me just show them to you. And I was hoping she'd be like, I hate them. No, they don't work. I don't want them. And she was like, oh my gosh, I love these chairs. It's exactly what I'm looking for. And so I remember helping her load them into her car. And inside I am dying because I know I could get money for these. I could replace these with something else. But it was more important that I got rid of the spirit of scarcity, that there would not be enough, that if you get what you need, I'm not going to get what I need. Spirit of scarcity, I had to go after it. And that has been the case in all of this, in giving money to the church, in sowing in other people's lives, and in investing. We have had to go after that in our lives, because the first thing that when crisis hits is you want to go like this and you want to eat your seed.
That's right. And I remember so clearly at the beginning of COVID, thinking, I have felt this feeling
Yes.
before.
Yes.
I don't know if that happened to anybody, but I felt like, oh my goodness, I feel this fear of like, what's going to happen? Is the other shoe going to drop? And I remember thinking, wait a minute, if God pulled me through then, he'll pull me through now. But there was there were things that we learned back then, like what you were saying.
That's
There's
right.
things that you learn of like, don't eat your seed. Sow your seed. Don't eat your seed, sow your seed. And that really pulled me through. Renee and I, my husband Renee and I, here in town, we had some students around town actually that didn't really have much to eat so we would just make sure that we gave them something to eat. But I'll tell you this, my fridge never was empty.
Wow.
Never.
Come
I
on.
always had food, and good food, you know, and really good quality food. So I totally agree that that's a biblical principle. I knew a God as my provider for many years, but in this season, he is provision for me. So it's
That's
like,
brilliant.
it's
I
something,
love that.
And I can't explain it, but until you go through it, it's like, it just
That's
becomes
right.
so real.
And we stayed at Bethel, like one of our, during our tithes and offerings, we declared checks in the mail,
Absolutely.
hidden money. And I when I first got here, I was like, oh, please, like, we're really going to declare checks in the mail. Like, is this Word of Faith? Did I go to Word of Faith? But you know what? Every time we did that over and over, I was shocked. And you know what was more important was not that we were saying it, but because I was saying it, when we would get surprise money, I acknowledged it as that God had done it.
Yes.
And that was the exchange. And it not so much that there was somehow like what we were saying was making it happen, but it was tuning us into the fact that God was giving it to us. And I think that's part of it. Like if you are fighting scarcity right now, go after it. Find somebody, buy somebody a meal, give somebody a cup of coffee, send somebody a donation, do something that says, I'm not going to bow down. I'm not going to eat my seed. I'm going to sow my seed and really go after that. And you can get that stuff off of you. It's very important.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next point, Julie.
Yes. Alrighty. So our next point is no shame for past mistakes. Face things head on. So in my personal life, until I realized like, you know what, I have this issue. I got into debt, and I have to say that it was hard. It was shameful. I was embarrassed. I didn't know at that time I was single. I'm like, I don't know if anyone's going to want to marry me with this debt. You know, I was just like, I was just crumbling. But you have to face things head on, because if you don't face things head on, they're just going to keep on growing and growing. And we have to confront that. So there's no shame for that. And I kind of want to speak to women out there that maybe because of a divorce, maybe because of a bad decision, maybe, you know, you didn't have the tools, but I really want to say that there's no shame for past mistakes. We are all beginners in this season.
That's right.
No one thought that something like this, like a black swan, like what financial folks say as a black swan, something that happens, you know, completely at no one's fault, and it's catastrophic. This is no one's fault. We're all beginners in this. We don't know. We're all learning. So there's no shame for that. There's no shame for things that we just don't know. Yeah, you just don't know. And
when you're ashamed, you don't ask for help. And when you ask for help, you don't get the resource. I remember at one time, Ben and I went to buy the house that we're in, and we got our credit report, and it was horrible. And we were like, we don't have any debt. Like, we don't understand, like, what is this? And what had happened was there was one department store that we paid the bill, but there was a $2 fee that came back, and they actually had litigation with this department store, and this was something they had done to a lot of their customers. But that $2 had sat there. We didn't know. And it finally went to creditors because we had no idea it was sitting there. We paid that bill.
Wow.
And by the time we got it, it had deducted our thing. And you know what? The first thing I felt was humiliated and embarrassed and like, oh my gosh, we can't even get a loan for this house, and we make enough to get it.
Right.
And I remember sharing it with a friend at my kid's birthday party and being like, this is what happened. It's so weird. And she goes, you know what? We had the same thing happen. And there's this company that restores credit, and they will go after every bit of negative credit that you had and actually pursue it and clean it up. Would you like the number? And it's a fee every month, but it helps. And I'm like, sure, I'll take the number. And so we immediately called that company, and that company went to work for us and cleaned up everything. And you know what?
Good.
I have told people that story and given that number out to so many friends.
Good.
So it's when we're honest and we go, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah.
It's very helpful. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
When we quit our job, the Lord told me to quit my job in 2011. We had to move out of our house. We had to sell the one car that was the nicest car in our house, and we had to move in with friends in their house for a season to afford the transition and change. So right now, wherever you are, you cannot live like you've lived before.
Yeah.
And so instead of presenting to the world what you wish you had or who you wish they thought you were, humble yourself, sell what you cannot afford, get out of the house that you cannot afford, and live in a space that you can. I remember one time, and this is like, but one of my girlfriends, she was killing it in real estate. She had 4 kids in this beautiful house in the hills. And I lived in this 1,400 square foot old home in Roosevelt and my little bungalow. And she sat on my couch, I'll never forget. And she said, you know, Havilah, I would do anything to live in this house right now with the pressure that I'm living. And she ended up losing her marriage and losing her home and losing everything. And she goes, I would live in this home. And I remember thinking, no, I would live in your home. You have the view of the whole valley, and you have this beautiful like house and pool. But I didn't understand what she was saying. And she was saying, it's not worth it. Guys, it is not worth it to live beyond your means. To present. You're adding anxiety and stress to an already intense season in life.
Absolutely. And it's unnecessary.
It's unnecessary.
And I feel like those things will come. You just have to stay the course. But right now where you're at, you have to identify where you're at and be authentic in that.
And don't you think too, like, why am I trying to keep on? Like, who am I trying
with the Joneses?
Who am I trying to impress rather than it's no one's business? Millionaires, you'll never know when they're a millionaire. They could live so, you listen to a Dave Ramsey, and these guys are cutting coupons and living off, very small, but they're millionaires because they know how to steward. So stop thinking that people that look like they have money, and people that don't have money.
Absolutely.
And stop getting caught in that false belief. It's not true.
Yeah. And it comes from an ideology that you have to present yourself as a certain way to be accepted. And you know what? No.
And if people need you to be a certain way for them to accept you, they're not real friends anyway.
No, get a new community.
That's right.
So let's go on to our next point, which is rework your budget. So this is real practical. This is real practical.
First thing we did when Corona hit.
That's right. That's the first thing that we did as Truth to Table. We did it in our personal lives as well. And you know what? There's things that you be pre this season you were able to do, now no, and that's okay. So really rework that. Take out the things that need to be taken out, adjust what's there that needs to be adjusted, and really live according to what the season is now. It's like what you were talking about, the manna.
And really what the first thing we did is we sat down, Ben and I, and the way I've done it since I was 17 years old is we separate mandatory expenses versus discretionary expenses. So mandatory is the 4 walls. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So it's something that Dave Ramsey talks about. This is the 4 walls: your utilities, your rent, your housing, your transportation, your food. I mean, all those are the 4 walls. So you got to make sure that those 4 things are just really taken care of first.
And when you're in crisis, that is really all you can do. So don't get all caught up in retirement and stop. Just the 4 walls.
That's right. And those 4 walls are really important in this season, because I don't know about you, but you have four boys, but my food bill went up, but everything else went down. I wasn't getting my nails done. I wasn't getting my hair done. All that was going down. That wasn't important anymore. What was important is I had power in my house. I had a home, I had food, and I had gas in my car.
It did feel that way, didn't it? Everything that everything got stripped away to what mattered.
Absolutely.
I would agree with that.
And all those other things didn't matter as long as you had these 4 things taken care of. So
100%.
rework your budget, sit with your husband, your wife, just go in there and just say, hey, what do we really need in this season? What's really priority? And I would just stick with those 4 things as your filter to decide what those priorities are.
And what you're talking about is you're not on the offense, you're on the defense. So when we went into this, anytime I'm on the defense of I may not have enough, and this is I make horrible decisions.
Yeah.
But when I go, you know what? That's not in the budget. Yeah. I actually want to cut that right now. I don't want to do you're living from an empowered place. So you have your mandatory expenses, which we had: food, clothing, insurance, basics. Right. And then your discretionary. And that's things like going out to eat and things like having a babysitter if you don't need it for work, or things that are clothing or shopping or any of that. You go down to bare bones and you really decide that, and your discretionary can be moved around, and you can pause all of that. But your mandatory has to be done. So one thing Ben and I have always done, again, this is not financial advice, but for us, we want our housing expenses to be 30% of our regular income.
Correct.
And then we keep that at the 30%. And then that allows us, and you know what's amazing? We've always driven cars we have no car payment, at least we have 2 cars that we have no car payment. We have one that we have a small, very small car payment. We could pay off if we wanted to, but ultimately I've been cars that are 9 years old, 11 years old. I've driven older cars. We've lived in smaller homes than we needed to. We've always just been really, really strict on what we can do. And I just think it's really important to do that.
I agree. And that takes us to our next point, which is stay the course. So if you're like me, sometimes I get excited and I think, oh, I've been a month saving.
I know.
I can splurge now.
Fully.
So I want to create like little gifts for myself or little like prizes, celebrations. And in this season, I've had to become creative. So what is a celebration? Okay, maybe a celebration is a nice dinner, but at home that I make.
Yes.
Or maybe it'll be like a nice walk or something. So stay the course. Once you rework your budget, once you start cleaning out that old mindset of like, I have to keep up with this person and that person, you stay the course. Stick it out. Come on. It's going to work for you. You just got to stick it out.
You do. And one thing I forgot to mention the last topic was, I've used mint.com forever, which is where all your stuff goes online. It's free and it grabs all your accounts. Really another app that Dave Ramsey recommends is Every Dollar. That's a fantastic one. For many years, we did the envelope system where we did cash only. And my recommendation is if you're having a hard time with your spending and with somebody else, you can actually get your spouse a debit card that runs, it's almost like a gift card where they get that cash and they don't want to use cash. That's fine. But here's your card. And when it runs out, it runs out. Yeah. I do that to myself for many times and many seasons, as well as cash envelopes. We've used those a ton, but you were saying to stay the course. So like yesterday, I wanted to buy a certain picture and I'd already bought the picture that I wanted, but I was like, you know what? I don't need to spend the money on that. And I went home and I was like, you know what? I think I could paint that. So I pulled out all my supplies that I had in my house and my Walmart little stuff that I got, and I painted the photos that matched the one I wanted, and I made do. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about being creative, thinking about ways that we can actually save money and be really good stewards of this season. One phrase that I think Dave Ramsey talks about, somebody, don't tell your kids, we don't have the money. We don't have any money. Good. That gives your kids anxiety when you're saying we don't have the money, that we can't spend that. We don't, that gives your kids anxiety. But if you can say something like that's not in the budget, that tells your kids that you're stewarding your money rather than being a slave to what you don't have. So I'll just say, oh, that's not in the budget. I'm sorry, I love you. And that allows, it's true. There's no lying in that. But I really think it's important, just like relational marital issues that you may have, to really take the big step behind closed doors. The same thing with your finances. Yeah. I remember my parents were really struggling in high school financially. They were going under and they were going into debt to live. And I remember they let Deborah and I in on it. Wow. And we had so much anxiety that we ended up having a conversation a couple of years later with my parents, and they had to apologize and said, we should never, because when you're a kid and you can't provide and you can't solve it for your family, that you really have anxiety about that. So I would just recommend that you set up some values and some parameters and boundaries where you don't talk about finances in front of your kids. Stop it. Yeah. It's not helping them. They're feeling overwhelmed and anxious, and there's no reason they should be concerned about where the food is coming from or what the roof over their head. You really need to be able to filter that and protect your family.
Absolutely. And speaking on the children's behalf, I think that sometimes we can have this false sense of responsibility and we want to come in and save the situation when that's not our role. So I totally agree with that. And I see some of the comments saying that, some people grew up with anxiety and have some of that.
You guys get it.
So you totally are on it and you are getting it. And one of the last things that we wanted to segue to is our last point, which is pivot your strategy, not your vision. I love this point.
Me too.
I love this point so much because here at Truth to Table, you had so much foresight of just making everything digital, right? Having a digital platform.
The Lord knew.
The Lord was so good. He knew, he totally knew. But some of us in this season were caught off guard and we're like, we want to start this business. We want to do this. We want to do that. How can we do it? You could still do it. You still have that vision,
really good.
but just pivot the way that you do it. Pivot the way that you execute it in this season. So in a season that dreams and promises and provision may feel delayed, there's no reason why we should stop.
I agree
right?
with that.
We should move forward and just pivot that strategy a little bit.
Pivot. Guys, we are anointed to have problem solving
That's right.
realities.
Yeah.
We are anointed to change direction and to see things that people cannot see. And I really want you to go after that. Lord, I'm asking for an anointing to shift course, to figure out how to change my strategy. Lord, I'm asking that you would expand my capacity.
Yeah.
You know, when we did our online stuff, I had no idea that it would end up paying our bills, but not only that, actually hiring people to do the work of the gospel. I had no idea. So this is the thing. I remember one time I was talking to my sister and I was like, you know, I'm nervous about this and how we're going to provide and what I'm going to do if this thing falls apart. And she goes, Havilah, you are so resourceful. You never have to be afraid of that again.
So good.
And when she said it, I realized that I was thinking one way and one strategy, and that was the only way to get to the vision.
Yeah.
Guys, let me just declare that and prophesy that over you. You are resourceful because you have access to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. You have access to heaven. You have access to the kingdom of God. And so what your world may be saying to you and what the economy and CNN and Fox News and all the things, let me tell you something. You are in this world, but you are not of this world.
Right.
So I'm not trying to preach, but I want to get that off of you that says everything is lost, all is gone. No, it is not.
No.
This is the season, and I prophesy this over you. This is a season of new beginnings and creative strategy. This is when things get launched, things get birthed, ideas come to life.
Yes.
And so I just want you to understand that. And so pivot. What does it mean to pivot? Pivot is important because if you wait to pivot, you'll be forced to pivot. And when you're forced to pivot, you don't make good decisions.
That's right.
And so one thing we did when everything happened, we were like, family meeting, like Dr. What about Bob, the movie, when he's like, family meeting. I was like, family meeting. So we sat in the conference room and we went through every line item. Can we cancel this subscription? Can we get into this moment? What's important? And it doesn't mean we just go so bare bones. There are some things like Truth Academy where we need hope and faith, and that begins to be a lifeline in our lives. But there are other things that do I need that filter? Do I need this?
Absolutely.
And then we went home and did the exact same thing. Ben and I sat and we were like, what's our bare bones? And we came up with 3 strategies, not one. Not if we keep our job, everything is the same. And if we don't, this all falls apart. We came up with, what does it look like if we lost 20%? What does it look like if we lost 40%? What if it looked like we lost 70%? And we went through those strategies and we knew when we needed to get rid of certain things and we were not going to buy into fear.
That's right.
And that's what I think is critical with finances. Stop acting like if we don't look at it, it's not really happening. And I just find this, when I start feeling stressed, the last thing I want to do is talk about finances. And our friends Rochelle and Dustin, who are at Truth the Table, she said they would call it Budget Bonanza. And it happened every Sunday. And they would sit down as a couple and they would go through it. She goes, Dustin needed a fun name, but I wanted to go through it. And so I just think it's really important to get in that rhythm. My husband and I, once a week, we sit down. Guys, it's not formal. Ben and I are not perfect people or things, but it's more like, are we okay? Where's the money coming in from this week? Anything we need to deal with? That's really what it looks like.
Oh my gosh, same. I have chills just hearing you because I do remember that family meeting.
Yes.
And I love this because we're talking about exactly what we did. We're not saying we're super experts at this, but we're just saying this is what we've done. And what you said about not being forced to pivot is so key.
It is.
Just be ahead of that. But when we're forced to pivot, usually fear is the one that's driving it. And when fear is driving it, you don't make the best decisions.
So true.
And I'm just going to add a testimony to what you said because I'm not even going to touch that. It was perfect. So just to add a testimony to what you said, in my circle of friends, I have about 3-4 friends that have launched businesses in this time. So this could be the worst time to launch a business, but they have a launch. So one of them loves like cooking and food. And she called me one day and she's like, Julie, I think I have this idea to like give moms a break in coronavirus time.
Oh
she's
my
like, because moms are
gosh.
probably tired of cooking
You
every day.
think?
I know. She's in Miami. Sorry, if not, I would have told you.
Does she ship
I
yet? That's the
know.
question.
So I said to her, hey, why don't you do this and that? And we just talked about it one day. The next weekend, she had over 200 orders. Over 200
You
orders.
are kidding.
It's, I mean, she can't keep up. She cannot keep up. So, and I've heard of some people that like, they're actually quitting their regular job to just launch their businesses because things are doing so well. So this is a season to pivot. This is not a season to shrink back. This is a season to actually say, what is God actually calling me to do? Stay the course, stick with that vision. Yeah.
And I always say, you don't have to solve everyone's problems or the problems for tomorrow. You just have to solve today's problem.
Yeah.
So, you need to think about ways you can bring in revenue that's unique to you. What are you an expert in? If you're good at finances, could you do somebody else's finances for a season?
Absolutely.
If you're good at taking care of kids, maybe you could childcare for a season. Like, really begin to think of ways to bring in some revenue. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just begin to expand your idea of what you can do. And I feel like that's just critical. To bring in any kind of wealth is you have to diversify and have an ability to bring in revenue from different areas and different places.
Absolutely. And as women, we are so resourceful. Like there's so many gifts and talents inside us. The world just needs. So I think online, I heard a statistic like women, minorities are like one of the top influencers out there.
Absolutely.
So get on it. I think we're watching some influencers right now. So
I am so excited. And, I would say this, we're not just trying to steward the seed we have so that we can eat. I believe that there's an anointing in our lives to feed a lot of people.
That's right.
And so we don't want to have wealth so that we can store it up and just take care of ourselves. We want to have wealth mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, so that we can really serve the world around us. Right. So some of us, we think that poverty is next to godliness. And I just want to say, I can't find that in the scripture. Mm-hmm. But there were very many wealthy men, including King David, all the way to Job, lots of wealthy men that served the body of Christ in a powerful way. So if you have income and you're feeling guilty for that, I just want to say that is not at all the heart of God for you. Absolutely. In fact, the fact that you have revenue and income in a season like this, obviously it's not a time to give to all the needs, but strategically you can actually birth a lot of things in the spirit by giving to the right things at the right time. And I would just ask the Holy Spirit about that and not to be ashamed that that's not your issue right now. I think there can sometimes feel, and Ben and I in the middle of the recession, all of our friends are filing bankruptcy and we're living okay. And there was a point where I started feeling guilty. Like I wanted to be like, yeah, me too. Mm-hmm. And the truth was, no, it wasn't. It wasn't because I was any better than anybody else. It just happened to be some decisions we made. So, and that set us up for where we are today. Yeah. So wherever you are, if you are in a desperate need, I promise you, I have family members that are just making incredible livings. And it came out of that desperate season. And then I also have friends that made a good amount and now are some of the most incredibly generous people on the face of the earth in these seasons. So the main goal is not to be afraid. The main goal is to fear no evil.
That's right. That's so good. Yeah. So time is kind of escaping us a little bit.
I know it's awesome.
Been amazing. Okay. So we have some live guests and we have some questions that everybody submitted. So we want to get to both because we really want to make sure that we answer all your questions. So I have a couple here. I'm just going to maybe go through one or two and then bring in our live guests after that. So one of the questions is, how do you keep peace between you and your husband when you have different spending habits? Do you maintain a joint account? That was one of kind of like a predominant question out there. So
well, I would say two family members that I know, that was such a place of contention that they ended up each opening up their own bank accounts, and that was their spending money. And then they both contribute to the family finances. So for some of you, you're working too hard. There's no reason. Well, the two should become one and we should share an account. No, you don't have to do that. There's no biblical reason for that. I don't think you having no ability to know what's going on. I think you should have some awareness, but ultimately that has brought more peace and clarity in how they operate. So, Ben's more the manager and I'm more the spender. And so I ask him, what do we got? Are we okay? And he's like, no, slow down, or yeah, that's fine. So that's how we operate. But if you feel like it's a place of contention, what I would do is really go to them and say, we need more peace. And this is creating this chaos. And so I'd rather us split a little bit. You have your account of spending. You have, maybe it's your discretionary accounts, get a certain amount, and you need to do the work. Go into your bank account. Your salary can be deposited. You can have an automatic sending of those monies into those accounts.
That's right.
And so your mandatory, those bills get auto paid, and that's there. And then your discretionary bills can be paid for however they want. If your spouse, you're afraid that they're killing your credit, then I would try to find ways to maybe get your name off of some of their accounts that they are maybe not having any clarity. Or I would even sit down with somebody and say, we need to be honest financially. And some of you, I love you. You need to sit down with your spouse and say, I'm tired of acting like this isn't happening, or that you're, because you're making the money and I'm at home, you get to spend what you want. And I got to live off of, this isn't working. We've got to figure this out. And I would really fight for that.
Totally.
What do you think?
I agree. So my husband and I, he has his own business. So he has a business account. We have personal accounts and we have credit cards. I have access to all of that.
You do. Okay.
But he manages his business account. I could see what he's doing.
Right.
But definitely he manages all of that. I'll manage like the bills, because I'm a little bit more structured when it comes to the money, even though I do like to spend too.
You are.
So I'm kind of a hybrid. I'm kind of a hybrid. But yeah, I totally agree. Like if one of you is better or one of you is not the best, then you know what, you may want to take your name off of that because you don't want your credit to get messed up.
And don't you think too, when you don't have a budget and all you're doing is managing what the person is spending, you're just end up being the parent.
Absolutely.
And so you guys both need to get your eyes on the budget. So it's like, here's the budget. Let's both look at this rather than you should stop spending and you should be doing this. It really creates chaos rather than it's on paper and it's right here and we're both like kind of in that moment.
Oh, we did that the first 5 years.
Yeah.
So now Google Docs, you have a Google sheet, you see everything, you just put it all out there and it's transparent for both of groups. So let's go ahead and go to the next question. How do you make balanced financial decisions between needs versus wants? That's a
great question.
I need everything.
Goals. What is your goal? Your goal will dictate your decision today, your vision. So what's our vision? We want to be debt free. We want to have another home. We want to pay for our kids' college. I don't know what it is, but you've got to have the vision first. Yeah. And then that dictates your decisions today. And so if you're just going need, want, well, depending on how you feel or what time of the month it is or whatever it is, you'll go in needs and wants and that can switch. So it's got to be, does it align with the vision we have for our lives? For Ben and I, we don't like to go into debt. And so do we have the cash for it? That's a very good way of saying it. And then need versus want, to be honest, with a spouse, it's very hard to dictate that because your need might be totally different than their want. And if you live with a minimalist, which I do, their needs are like very small and my needs are different. So instead of me feeling guilty about that, we just have a vision of what it looks like. And then I can steward what my needs and wants are personally.
Absolutely. And I would also add to that some seasons need versus wants are different.
They are.
Depending on the season. I remember I got laid off and in that season, a need was just
it's so true.
Food, shelter, utilities, and then
that's so true.
So things change. I would just accommodate to that season.
And in this season right now, we're way more particular about what we need and want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the last questions before we go on to our live guest is here. So a lot of you asked this, how do I tackle credit card debt?
Oh, yes. Let's talk about the snowball.
Yes, let's talk about the snowball. So one of the things we learned at Dave Ramsey, with Dave Ramsey, is the snowball effect for credit card debt. So you want to start building traction, right? So when a snowball is small, it starts getting more snow and more snow. It gets bigger and bigger. That's the same concept with tackling your credit card debt. You start with the credit cards that have the lowest balance, and then you start building that momentum, and you start getting excited. You start winning and start seeing that you're kicking those out. So that is a snowball snowball effect. That's what I would say to that. What do you think?
Yeah, and I love Dave Ramsey. We listen to it in our car every
Absolutely.
afternoon, whether my kids went to or not. I pop it on, and I like to just hear that kind of narrative all the time. Beans and rice, get rid of the debt. I just love having that around because everything else it feels like in the world is spend, spend, spend.
Absolutely.
So that would be my suggestion: is really combine, see what you can. Like those small successes neurologically, our brain rewards us.
Yes.
So if you can just even pay off the smallest bill first, that snowball happens, but it also your body and your brain actually rewards you. So start allowing your brain to actually reward itself so that you'll do more.
I love that. And I'm all about like feeling that I'm winning.
And don't live with your credit cards. Guys,
No.
if you keep using your credit cards, you are an adult. Stop acting like, well, I didn't know. It's so different. If you don't have the food in the house, you won't eat it. If you don't have the credit card in the wallet, you won't spend it. So get rid of your credit cards in your wallet and have your debit card in there and some cash. And here's the thing. I need it just in case. You know what? Very rarely does that happen. And if that was the case, you could probably call somebody to read off the credit card number if you need it. But then also get rid of the auto credit card fill-ins on your computer, because that's one of the easiest ways when you're on Amazon and you're like, it's connected, let's go. You need those interruptions that stop that basic. Like even right now, to be honest, if you're financially in trouble or you're feeling nervous, get rid of your auto bill pay and begin to pay your bills every week consciously. Get out of the auto mode, get out of that kind of automated mode and go, no, I'm going to consciously. I started using more cash in this season. I want to see the money go through my hands. I want to know what I'm spending. So get yourself off that automated stuff.
So good. Oh my goodness. So now we are going to go. We have three guests.
Oh,
three live
yay.
guests.
And they've been so patient.
They have. Okay. So we're going to go with our first guest, Josette. And let's go ahead and put our little earphones in. Here you go.
Hi, Josette.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Josette.
Hi.
Can you hear?
There we go. Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yep, I can hear you.
So share with us your question.
Oh, okay. So I have to read it here. Give me a second.
Okay.
Awesome.
So what I wrote was the Bible has little to say about engaged couples or couples in general, right, that aren't married. So I need a little bit of clarification. I am engaged and we're kind of having like some issues with finances. And some of the things that you mentioned were really good because I'm kind of, like a parent in the relationship because I'm a little bit more, I guess, smarter with my money. And, it's really hard because, we kind of argue on needs versus wants. And, my question is, how can we work together on our finances? Because, I know before marriage, it's not good to mix them, but how can we work towards that so that when we are married, it's not, the same argument? And I've been single for a very long time. I'm a single mom. So, for me, I'm like, okay, I know how to budget. I know how to be strict with my money. I know the four walls. I know Dave Ramsey principles, and I kind of go back and forth in the baby steps, as far as debt, student loan debt. Julia, I completely understand what you mean. I'm in a master's program right now, and it's just adding up and adding up and adding up, and the anxiety, just starts to come over you. But I know, that in this season, God has me, but going back to my question, how can we work together as an engaged couple before marriage?
Well, first of all, congratulations on getting married. That's really exciting. And when all that works, together, where you find the one that you love and they love you and it's going to happen, that's super exciting. And I think it sounds like you're pretty self-aware, even like you said, you've been single for a while, you're probably pretty mature, you understand these things. And the truth is, this is complex because you have another adult who's had a way of doing life and you've had your way of doing life. And nothing is more unsexy than parenting your spouse. And so what we want to do is set you up for success. But I bet you anything, if you're like us, you probably overfunction and he underfunctions. And so when you get both that happening, it's hard not to take that role. So, Julie, I'd love your thoughts, but one thing I would say is we can't deal with problems. You're seeing a pattern in his life of how he deals with income. And so you can still stay powerful in your income, in your finances alongside of what he's doing. But this is the perfect step that comes out in counseling.
Yeah.
Ben and I, we sat down with our counselors, and the first thing they asked us was, well, how do you guys deal with money?
Mhm.
What was your family life like? How are you planning on moving ahead? So some of these questions can be asked without you going to him and saying, what are you going to do? What do you think about this? What about that? But then also, there's no reason why everything needs to go into a joint moment when really you could begin to slowly merge, just like your life, slowly merge your finances. But that's, I would ask, first of all, have you been able to see somebody in terms of marriage counseling or anything like that?
No, especially now with COVID hitting.
I know, right.
We really can't go into our church, things like that. I do counseling on my own. So, that's been telehealth. But as far as, going together, we haven't been able to do that. And I feel like I'm the stronger one, telling, well, you have to do this, and Dan Ramsey that, and you need to budget and budget and budget. And he does a lot of side hustles. He'll work a lot, just to have the money, but he also spends as hard as he works. So, it's a real struggle.
And it totally makes sense. I guess that's what I would recommend first, is if you could find somebody, and I would call your church and say, would anybody be willing to do some pre-marriage counseling before we get married? And it's not counseling like a therapist. It's just like hey, like in our counseling, they gave us a test and they found out what our strengths were and where our parts of ours challenging. Like they even defined us like what kind of marital couple we were. We were the classic type, which, but we weren't classic because I worked and he worked. So it's really good to understand some of that. And I just think maybe you're asking too much of yourself to do this on your own, and it would be helpful to get some help. What do you think, Julie?
Yes, I totally agree. And there's nothing wrong with talking about finances before. In fact, one of the things that it's really important is to kind of like just be able to bring those things up. But I do agree that before any step, I would just seek counseling, because you don't want to start this relationship by overperforming and parenting.
And I would say this, you're asking all the right questions,
Absolutely.
but I'm concerned that you might be taking all the responsibility. And the truth is, it's not just right or wrong. These are very gray moments. And some of your, the idea that you're fearful that this could be a challenge is you can get ahead of this. And I think you are getting ahead of it, but maybe in a unique way of saying, I don't want to parent you. I don't want to be in charge of all this. We need somebody to help us kind of sort some of this out and really empower yourself to do that. I also think sometimes, we end up kind of trying to pay for things that we think are going to happen, but we don't really know. He's got a good work ethic. He tends to spend, but he's never, you guys haven't been married before. So I think some of these conversations will be really helpful, but with a third party is, I think, really important. I think it's a great question.
Yes, totally agree. And I'm so sorry we don't have time for your second question, because we have to move on to our two next guests. But I would suggest you just email us at support@truthtotable.com, and we'll be sure to get back to you on that. Does that sound good?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Josette. Okay, so we are going to go now to Norma. Okay, Barbara. Sorry about that. Barbara,
welcome to the program.
Yes, Barbara, you are on, Barbara. Oh, Norma, I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
You're on. Yay!
Yay.
Everyone else.
Well, my question, Hadala, is how do I stay hopeful about financial increase? Because I believe in that. God is good. When I'm starting a new business and I'm pouring more in for training than I'm making, which right now is nothing in this new season. I have income streams from elsewhere, but oh my goodness, I felt the shame that Julie was talking about because of what I've spent. And like, I can't show my husband this. He's going to hate me. Well, we had to have a come to Jesus meeting, and he didn't hate me. I was praying so fervently, Lord, don't let him hate me for what I've invested. Because basically he believes in me. And I think God calmed him down or helped him to, we've had some good conversations. So I'll let you answer the question now.
Well, Norma, I love that you have an entrepreneurial spirit and that you want to do something that's unique. And the truth is, we don't always know what we're getting into.
Mhm.
And specifically, if you've never been here before, it sounds like you are hard on yourself, and that even your husband wasn't as hard as you thought he would be because you didn't know. And so I would first say, what you're doing, you stepped out of the boat.
Mhm.
Like, congratulations. That takes so much courage to not do what everybody else is doing, but to
100%.
try. And I'm proud of you. It's scary when you're out there. And I relate to the scariness of it. Is I don't know if this is all going to pay off, and we're out on the limb. And I would say, it sounds like your husband has the capacity to support you in ways that you haven't even allowed him to support you.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you need that. You need that secondary person that says, I think we could spend this, or I think you should do that kind of training, or I think you should. It sounds like you've kind of in fear grabbed everything and done it on your own. And I really think that this is a moment. It may not even be about the business. It may not even be about the income. This may be a moment where you get to bond with your spouse in a way that you've never bonded, and allowed him to be the support. And I would tell him that. I would say, I thought you were going to hate me. I thought I was going to be ashamed of this. And you were there with me. And here's the thing. I don't want to do anything without you anymore. I did it because I was afraid that you would be ashamed or embarrassed, or you would be mad at me. But now I see you're with me. So will you walk with me in this? I don't know how to fully do this, but I want to put everything around. I want everything out in the open. And I need your help to just have that secondary. It's so different when you're taking risks by yourself and you're afraid you're going to risk each other's future, rather than we're doing this risk together. And that's what it sounds like you need, is that reassurance that you can do this together. And that would be my recommendation. There are things I have done that have been successful, and there are things I've done that have been a disaster. But ultimately, I have to go back to what matters most. And what matters most is my marriage, my relationships, the people around me. And so right now, I'm so excited that he had the response that you needed. But I kind of think you could bring him into the next season so that you don't feel like you're by yourself.
Absolutely. And I think the gift of partnership is what God is giving her in this partnership with her.
What were you going to say, Norma?
Wow. What? Oh, I was going to say, Steve DeSilva would be so proud of you. You just gave me the best financial sozo I have ever. That was worth millions right there, because you are right. You're absolutely right. I haven't trusted him. I've done things secretly on my own, hoping they work out, and always they do. But this is a new season. This is time for me to trust him, trust the Lord as one, the three of us as one.
And you just have such, if it was about heart, you get an A+, unfortunately life isn't always like that. But I think you're going to help a lot of people with this. This is not just about you. You're going to help a lot of people as you guys unite together. You're going to talk to a lot of women that don't know how to bring their husband in on it. That is not a lone person. No. Mm-hmm. This is I would say this is a common generational thing that we need help. And so you're going to help a lot of women know how to do that. Because I know, even with the hundreds and hundreds of people that are on with us, I know there are many women that have taken a risk and don't know how to bring their husband in on it. And it's scary. And so I remember one time I went to go do something, and I thought it was going to be a third of the price. And when I got there, the woman was like, "Oh no, it's not $300. It's like $1,800.
Oh boy. And
I had this sinking feeling. I wrote the check, I gave it to her, and I went home, and I did not tell Ben for 24 hours. I just thought this is going to be a disaster. And I said to him, I did not want to tell you this. I was scared. I didn't know. I should have done my research. I didn't. And I said, but this is what happened. And he was like, that's okay. It was how I told him and what I told him. And I just think there's so many women and men right now that are watching this, that the best thing you can do is bring your spouse in on it. And all that the enemy wants to do is keep us from each other. And even if they get angry, it's going to feel better to deal with their disappointment than it will the feeling like you're by yourself and you have to do this on your own.
Oh my gosh.
So wonderful. Good. Norma, you are amazing. I want to adopt you so you can live with us. You're so sweet.
You're amazing, Norma.
Have a good day, Norma.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you have somebody else.
We do. Barbara?
Okay. So we have Barbara coming on.
Yeah.
Hey, Barbara.
Hello. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for hosting these series. Havila, your life and teachings are so inspiring to me. I'm watching from Europe. I actually live in the Czech Republic, and I've met you in Reading. So I'm so glad I can do this online.
Me too.
Yeah, so my question is kind of flowing with the other questions that were asked before. My husband and I, we come from very different family backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And I found it always hard. We've been married for many years, but I found it hard to just find unity in some of the like priorities in spending, generosity in giving, how much debt is okay or not, just these different questions. And he's not passive at all. He's very active, but I just find it difficult as a Christian couple to find unity in that area, honestly. Mm-hmm. So what can we do? How can we find unity in some of these questions concerning finance?
Sure. So I can relate because my husband grew up with his family were self-employed, had his own businesses, so he was a little bit more frugal than my upbringing. So we kind of had to come to Jesus. We had to have a come to Jesus talk a couple of years into our marriage. We didn't do this before. We should have done this before. But I think it's about coming together and realizing what each of us bring to the table as far as like what our past mindset was. He would wear a belt up until it broke. And me, if I had a belt that it just had a little bit of a nick, I'm like, oh, it's broken. Let me get a new one. So even something as small as that, we had to come together. And I'll tell you this, that after 12 years of marriage, he's a little bit more like me and I'm a little bit more like him. So we kind of blended. But that does take a little bit of time, I would say, but really being honest about where you're at.
Communicating.
Yep.
I also want to say this. Your marriage is spiritual. Yes. And God is so into your marriage and your relationship that sometimes we want to do things as a spiritual, we want to be generous, we want to help sow into this, we want to give this. And yet sometimes we're thinking, well, my spouse, 2 yeses have to make a yes, and there's no yes there. Your ability to surrender to him saying, I don't want to do that, and you going, okay, then I'm going to wait until you want to do that, is so spiritual. 100%. It's so like God looks at it as just as worthy as if you were to give to somebody or do something. I think sometimes we get so caught up in what we think are spiritual acts and what we think God will bless, rather than understanding, like, I remember with my kids, putting them to bed and doing a routine with them, and they're having prayer meetings and worship things. And I'm like, well, I should go there and worship and pray and all this. And I'm putting my kids to bed. And the Lord was like, no. This is just as spiritual as you over there worshiping your brains out. You putting your kids to bed is a spiritual act. So what I'm saying to you is, some of the ways that you have struggled with what is the right thing and should we do this, or I would do this, but he doesn't want to do this. Your desire to honor the Lord by hearing what he wants and honoring his no or his yes is a spiritual act. And that's what I want to tell you right now, is that it may not look the way you want it to, but I would also say, and you know this, you're a spiritual person, I would ask the Holy Spirit to divinely bring people in his life that will speak some things that you've been saying all along. And he would come to you and say, sweetheart, you've been saying this to me, but I didn't get it. But this pastor said this, or this leader said this to me, or this business advisor said this, and now I get it. Yes. And I just want to say, and this isn't to you specifically, Barbara, but in life, we have to stop being so concerned that our spouses hear it from us, and more concerned that our spouses hear it at all.
Period.
Right?
I agree.
So we ask, Holy Spirit, bring the right people in. And if me going, I think we're supposed to sow into this, and he says no, when I say, okay, then I'm not going to dishonor you. It takes 2 yeses to make a yes. Then that means God will bless it, because it comes down to obedience, not towards the act.
So good.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And I think that translates to a lot more than just dreams and finances.
I do
in
too.
marriage. That's a life right there.
We do it as an empowered. We're not
100%.
I want to say there's so much of marriage that people act like it's a have to, and I have to submit, and I have to do this, and I have no. If you could look at it as, what I'm doing to my spouse isn't about what they've earned or what they're doing. I'm doing it because I'm a godly, empowered woman who could choose not to do it, but I'm going to do it because I'm fully empowered. It's got a different it's almost a different
filter.
approach. Yeah. So that's what I would say is ask the Holy Spirit to bring people in that brings revelation. Understand that the things that don't feel spiritual are very spiritual. And also realize that sometimes life changes people. And so what has happened for this many years doesn't mean it's going to be forever. Things can shift as well. And I just love that you're calling in, Barbara. And I love that you're with us, even from the Czech Republic.
Yes.
I just love that you're here. It makes my heart just so happy.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what time it is there. So I just
It's evening. That's good.
okay. As long as it's not like 3 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. No, don't worry. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Barbara.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And Barbara's from the Czech Republic, but I saw folks on here from Haiti, from just different places in the US. So thank you guys so much for sticking with us. Have something that you mentioned earlier, kind of like halfway in, was that when we had that come to Jesus talk or that family meeting here at Truth to Table, you said something that we chose not to do away with Truth Academy. And maybe some folks here on our live don't know what Truth Academy is, but that's something that it was like a non-negotiable for us. We did not want to take away uncomplicating spiritual, your spiritual walk for women out there in this season.
That's right. So if you guys have been following us for a little bit, you would understand that we have this passion to bring truth to the table around the world. And we get to do that. I mean, every January, we host thousands of women and men from around the world. We try to give you guys a ton of content and resource you. We've got podcasts all the time that are dropping and social media. But there are some of you that really want to be a part of a community of committed believers that have this constant source of message and hope and faith. And so we created Truth Academy for not everybody, but for those of you that are looking for a community that want to be empowered with game plans, like daily game plans of how to get the truth of God's word in your everyday life. You're looking for empowerment courses like Hearing God's Voice or Chasing Your Dreams, and you just want to be taught. You want to be a student of truth. And so what we've done is we've opened it and closed it. So we opened it last year. We opened it this year, but we usually wait about a year to open it up. But with everything that's going on in our world right now, we have been bombarded with people that are like, I want to be a part of Truth Academy, but I don't want to wait. And how do I do that? So our wait list has filled up, and we realized as a team, you know what? It's a unique year. Like 2020 is a year like no other year. And so I don't think the rules of last year apply to this year.
Absolutely.
And so this year we're like, you know what? Let's take a week and let's open it up. We don't want to open up nonstop because we want it to be a group where people can get to know each other and see each other and connect.
Yeah.
But we felt like it was time to open it up. So we don't do this. This isn't a common thing, but what we've done is, for those of you that are like on this and you're thinking, gosh, I would love something like this consistently. That's what Truth Academy is. Last month, we had Lisa Bevere talk about self-acceptance and body image. We had Mercy, she's a nurse practitioner in mental health. She came in and talked about longevity and standing strong. So we have an expert come on every month and teach through a topic, but we also every week send you a game plan, and we're online in our Facebook, and we're talking to each other and praying for each other and encouraging each other. And that's what this is, but in a private setting.
Absolutely. And many of our past members have said that this is like having a virtual mentor.
Yeah.
Many of us are craving for that person to just uncomplicate things for us. And everything, so aside from what you said, but everything, every book, every course, everything is accessible to all Truth Academy
it's an
members.
all-access pass.
It's literally like behind the scenes, all access to just everything.
It is. It includes every Bible study we've done, all of our live messages. It even includes the books I've written, Bible studies. That is all included for a Truth Academy member. So it's just basically being like, hey, here's your all-access pass. Here's your key. Unlock everything that we've done in that space. So if you're curious about that and you want to join, we have a link we put right in front, or at least it's a website that you can go and link in. And that's really a limited time. So don't be thinking like, oh, I'll do it later. We're just opening it for a few days. So if that's something that's on your heart and you think it's you, if it's not you, or you're like, well, don't do it. You'll find us on socials. We got lots of other things that go with that. But this is for those that are looking for the next thing. You know that this season is going to be a hard season.
Mm-hmm.
You know that everything that can be shaken has been shaken, and you are looking for a lifeline of hope and truth and faith and the word of God, then Truth Academy is for you. You're needing that, and that investment makes sense to you, then do Truth Academy. For some of you, we believe we're going to be that prophetic lifeline to say, follow us like we follow Christ. You can do this, and you are not alone, and no amount of hardship that you're facing is going to keep your truth away from you. So that's what that is. I also want to say, for those of you that are curious about finances as well, Dave Ramsey, it's called the Peace University, is giving away a free 14-day trial over there. So if you're like, I need a financial breakthrough, this just brought it up, I encourage you to go check that out. You can download the Every Dollar app. That's a phenomenal, but mostly just listen to his radio program and listen to what he's talking about on finances, if that's your curiosity. If you want to hang out with us at Truth Academy, make sure you click that link and those are kind of your next steps in regards. I mean, there has been hundreds of people on here. We had over 500 people watching yesterday, hundreds of you today. This has been really cool.
It has. We're just so blown away by the response and by the fact that we're so honored to be a lifeline to people in this season. It really is.
And we're trying to give you guys, we're trying to serve you in ways that what we need.
Yeah.
So not what we think you need, but what we would need. And I would need marriage counsel. I would need financial counsel. And then tomorrow we're doing one on faith. And we just find that people are struggling with, where is God in the midst of all this? And we don't like to admit that, but a lot of people, if we don't ask those questions, then we end up losing our faith in moments of trials. And so we want to help you hold on to your faith and answer some of those questions that you're facing right now in the midst of this very chaotic and uncertain time.
Absolutely. And sorry for the hard segue, but I think Lizzie asked the question on Truth Academy. She just wanted to know if it's like a combination of resources and training and prayer. It's both. I would say this is like the best of both worlds, because you have community that you could reach out for prayer, but you also have resources and training as well.
Yeah, we believe that God uses community to help us. The Bible says that in community, there is a multitude of wisdom. So it means we get a lot of our life questions answered when we get around a lot of people. So Truth Academy isn't just the Havilah Cunnington show by any means. There's a full, alive community of powerful women that are there to pray and speak life over you and tell you what's working for them. And it's also a time where we as a community go through. We have a theme every month that we tackle. We have a featured Bible study that goes along with it. You can do as much as you want or as little as you want. The main thing is just that you make a little investment so that you end up showing up, and it's not just something out there that you once did or have access to.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that. I love that. We have great testimonies from Truth Academy, and we hope to see you guys there as well.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you for tuning in. I know it's so hard. I mean, literally, we could have went for another 30 minutes.
I think so.
Julie, I love you. I'm obsessed with you. I just think you are the most fiery, powerful. She's a ordained minister. This woman is amazing, and she serves us like crazy. And I'm so grateful for her. I hope we get to hear more from her as we get going in the future. But mostly, we love you guys. We're praying for abundance and grace and clarity and healing in every area. Thank you to our viewers that tuned in, the 3 different powerful women, and thank you for being honest and vulnerable. I can see through the feed that so many people were relating to you and getting so much out of the way that you shared your life.
I know. We can't wait to see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a whole new topic, which is faith. A lot of you have sent a lot of great questions. So tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific time, we will see you right here.
10 a.m. tomorrow. Bye, you guys.
Bye.